Hey everybody. So sorry that I can't be with you today. Something came up and I've got to be sworn in for a board that I sit on. So what I wanted to do was go ahead and go over the rest of chapter 6 so you would have it. And let's talk about the exam that's going to be open on Wednesday. So let's start with chapter 6 first. Remember, we talked about the last time we were together, we talked about chapter 6 in relation to what that means to us as consumers. So, kind of that consumer behavior. How do we purchase things? What is our motivation? What derives the demand from us? And then we moved on into the other part of chapter 6, where we're talking about that B2B, that business to business. It's a little bit different, right? The end user of the product is not necessarily the person that purchases the product. And so it looks a little bit different. So I'm going to pick up where we left off. Remember, the last time we were together, we were talking about kind of what was derived demand in the B2B kind of purchasing world. And remember, we were talking about at the end that Boeing can't sell 777s or any of their airplanes to American Airlines if customers don't want to book seats on American Airlines. So here's another example of that. This is a simple one from the textbook. The demand for education is what derives the demand for textbooks. So if we're not going to school or if we're not learning a particular subject, then those textbooks aren't needed. Also, that increases the demand for paper if we are printing an actual textbook. Okay, whatever that paper source looks like, right? That derives the demand for pulp, which comes from trees that are being torn down when they grind that up, which then has a demand for forestry products. So this is kind of it could be a controversial example depending on how we feel about paper and trees and all those things. But it just gives you an idea of how a lot of this stuff starts and flows. Okay. Here's a great way to kind of show you the difference between B2B and B2C marketing when it comes to our four Ps and a few other things. So when it comes to the product, remember that's where we're starting with. Generally in a B2B marketing, it's relatively technical in nature, meaning that the services that go with that product are very important. And usually what's happening is there's at some point in time, whatever product is being created because of that B2B transaction or that relationship, it's often sold to us as the consumer. In the B2C marketing, service is less important than the B2B, but we do care about that, especially depending on what type of product that we are purchasing. When it comes to the price, there's a lot of competitive bidding that's happening in the B2B space. Remember, we talked about that is based highly on relationships and kind of the bigger deals that are happening, and you're at a much higher price point, and there's a lot more money that's being spent in that B2B space. Generally, in B2C, it's the list price. There's no bidding. There's no real relationship. You can't go into a McDonald's and they give you a price for a meal there and you go, yeah, no, I'm not feeling that. I would like to have, what about $7 as opposed to $10? And then they come back with $8. That's not how that's going to work in that situation. Our other P's is promotion. Generally, in a B2B, it's on personal selling, right? We've already talked about that a good bit. On the B2C, it's going to be advertising, whatever that looks like. In the distribution or the place, generally that's going to be a relatively short, direct channel to whoever the customer is, the B2B. On our side of it, on the B2C, it's going to pass through a number of intermediaries, a lot of different groups, unless you're buying from something like Etsy or at a sole proprietor mom and pop shop where you're going directly to the person that's creating that. When it comes to customer relationships, we've talked about this, and on the B2B, it's very complex. For them, this is the most important piece of a B2B marketing relationship. And on the B2C, it's important, but it's generally much, much, much less. Okay. Decision making involves a lot of different people in the decision making for a B2B. A lot of hands have to go through. These are usually very large purchases. And for us, right, generally it's just us making a decision, or it could potentially be the household, depending on what that looks like. Okay. So very similarly to us in our buying and decision, like for the consumer behavior, we've got to recognize there's a problem. We have to search for information. We have to evaluate those alternatives, select the best product and supplier, and evaluate the post-purchase. Same as for us. All right. So for a business, right, they've got to recognize that there's actually a problem. So they might need to replace some outdated equipment. There might be changes in technology. They might have want to offer some new products or change the products that they're offering. Plus, there might be some different changes in our needs and our wants, the consumer. They're in the person who's purchasing their products. And they also might have received some different communications in the marketing space where they've kind of gotten a clue that something needs to be done or changed. A great example of that one is when a restaurant or a company gets rid of a product that the public really, really, really loved, and then they have asked them to bring it back. So it might have been off the menu or out of stock for many, many years, and now they're wanting to recreate that. So they probably have to do something differently to ramp up to be able to serve and meet that new need or that resurgent of a need. Just like us, they're going to search for information. They're going to search for information about the products and potential suppliers. They're going to develop the product specifications. What is it that they're wanting to create? That way they know what they need. And then I told you about this before. That's where they're going to put out what's called an RFP, or request for proposal, where they're going to put out for essentially for bids. I gave you the example of Winthrop when we were rebranding Winthrop University, and we were kind of looking for a marketing company to be able to help us do that. And we put out an RFP for that. We listed out everything that we wanted, things that we wanted to achieve, and we put that out for bid. That is required by the state, and some companies require that, and they require a certain number of bids to come in or to be reviewed before they can move forward. Evaluate the alternatives. So once those bids come in or those proposals come in, they're going to have to evaluate, right? They're looking for a price, they're looking for a certain quantity of things, the reputation of their supplier or of the vendor that might be doing this for them. How quickly can they get us what we need? What's the availability of this person? What's the relationship? For the one that we did for Winthrop, when it came to finding someone to do our marketing, we were looking at what was their reputation. So we asked them to give us some references, and we called and worked with those schools that they had or said that we could contact to kind of understand what was the good, what was the bad, how long did it take. If they said that they could do it in 6 months, did they deliver on that? What was the availability of our key liaison with that company, all those things. When it comes to the price and where they're trying to evaluate the alternatives, they're going to look at things like what are the discounts that are given? Maybe there's a volume discount. If you purchase a certain amount, you get a discount. What's the return or replace policy? We're talking about the fryers at McDonald's, right? So if those fryers come in and they don't do what I say or what you say that they're going to do, what's the return policy? Are you going to replace those? What does that timeliness look like? What is the historical repair cost and track record of this particular product? Is it something that's going to cause me problems ongoing? I've got to run a business. What do the service contracts look like, and what might be the financing terms? Okay, so those are things we're looking at in the price from a B2B. Not necessarily a lot of things that we look at on the B2C unless we are talking about a house or a car. That's where some of the discounts might come in with service contracts, financing terms, things like that. The step 4 is selecting the product or supplier. You've got a couple of choices in this. So from us, right, we generally go to one source when we're buying some stuff. But when it comes to for a B2B, you've got a couple of choices. Single sourcing means that you've got one supplier, like everything that you buy. If I'm buying fryers for McDonald's, I'm buying it from a single source. If I'm doing multiple sourcing, I'm buying it from different suppliers, getting that same thing. If we were in class, I'd ask you right now, what was the benefit of having multiple sources? And here's the benefit for that. If you have a single source supplier of anything, regardless of what it is, and we learned this very quickly during COVID, but if you have a single source supplier, if that supplier goes out of business, if they have a death in their family, if they have some hiccup in their supply chain or their manufacturing, your business is now at a standstill. And so having multiple suppliers is beneficial, right? Because your business can keep going. The problem with having multiple suppliers might be that the quality is different. The product isn't exactly the same. Now you're working with different contracts. You're working with different salespeople. They might have different rules on repairs and replace, any of those things. So there are pros and cons to both of these, and you have to figure out for your business which is the right one. Also, they have to make a decision. Are they going to produce something in-house or are they going to outsourcing? Okay, so let's talk about that. When it comes to outsourcing, this is when a company has to decide if they're going to use outside vendors to produce certain goods or services, or they're going to produce it themselves. Okay. A great example of this would be, so let's say that for McDonald's, okay? So McDonald's is selling pastries. I've seen that happen a little bit in their stores. Is that something that they're going to produce in-house, right? So it's a nice something that they've created, it's homemade, or are they going to purchase that from somewhere else and then sell it to you, right? So that's outsourcing. Very simple example. This happens all the time with businesses. So for you, I want you to kind of think about what are the pros and cons of outsourcing, okay? Uh, on your own, but I'm going to give you some as well. So the pros of outsourcing might be it's cost effective, right? They're not having to take that cost on themselves. They can select the highest quality company and products, right? They could put out an RFP. They could do some of that bidding and kind of looking at different proposals. Plus, it allows the company to free up time to focus on its core competencies, which are the things that it does well. So remember when we talked about even with your pizza restaurant, right? Like what is that value proposition? How can you tell people how you bring value and what you do well? Well, the core competencies is what do you do well? What are you known for? Mhm. Some of the cons of outsourcing, on the other hand, many companies discover that their cost savings is actually less than half the figure that was promised by the vendors. So you've got to understand who you're working with. There could be potential problems with suppliers who fail to deliver those goods properly, which then causes you not to be able to deliver your products. And you're also losing touch with the customers a lot of time. Another great example of this that might hit home a little bit more for y'all. So, especially post kind of in the COVID area and post, a lot of people were creating things on Canva. They were creating things kind of digitally, and they were sending them through a company called Shopify or some others, right? So whether it was a sweatshirt or a mug or a journal, all these different things. So they would create all these things and then they would send it through a company to create them and make them. And then that company was sending it on to the consumer. Well, the risk in doing that is you have no idea what the quality is. You have no idea if it's correct because you yourself, you've designed it, but you've sent it off somewhere else to be produced, and then the production company is sending it on to the consumer. So your hands are not touching every single one of those products that you're sending to the consumer, to your end customer. And so you don't have control over it. And so that could be a con of outsourcing, some things like that. Okay. All right, step five, you've got to evaluate the post-purchase, just like we do, right? So you've got to decide if are you satisfied with the product that you purchased or your service that you purchased? Are you satisfied with the price? Are you satisfied with if you had an issue, what the customer service was like? You've got to look and say, okay, well, has demand, what we thought was going to happen in the demand category, has all of those things happened the way we wanted to? And are we going to buy this again? Was the price, the cost that we incurred, did it meet our expectations? Okay. All right. For you specifically, here's what's important about that B2B space. A lot of times you as college students, you're landing jobs in that B2B, B2C, right? So it's retail, it's fast food, it's a restaurant, it's customer service, something like that, right? Whether it's a bank, whether it's an insurance agency, whatever it might be. But where we want you to go is looking at a lot of times where that B2B kind of job is. That's where you're going to find more money, greater skill requirements, the things that you're learning in these classes. And also, of course, with that greater challenge is going to come that greater pay. So don't discount this B2B area. There's a lot to be had in that. And a lot of companies, of course, especially your larger companies, this is the space that they are in. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for you for just a second. I want to talk to you about our exam. So the exam on Wednesday, it's 40 questions, 2.5 points each for each question. That, of course, will make up to 100. It is on Blackboard. It is straight out of our notes and our slides. There is a study guide for it on Blackboard. I'll open it today. On Wednesday, I will open the exam. You can take it on Wednesday. I will give you until Thursday at 11:59. So if something happens, if something comes up, I will open it on Wednesday. It'll open Wednesday morning, and you can take it during class time if you want, or you can take it all the way up until Thursday at 11:59. You can use your notes, you can use the slides, you can use anything that we've talked about, just do not use each other. This kind of works as a quiz, not necessarily as a big exam. As I mentioned to you, we have 3 of these. And so you've got one on chapters 1 through 6, not including 5. Our second exam is from chapters 7 through 10. And then the third exam is on chapters 11 through 14. None of them are cumulative. They're only on the particular chapters that we're talking about. So it's really, did you get the information? Did you catch it? Do you understand what we're talking about? And let me remind you that the points that you earn for participation and being present in class is just as much as all 3 of these exams put together. Okay. So that's why it's important to show up, to be present, to have those conversations in class, to answer questions. Because at the end of the day, what I want you to know is not to be able to regurgitate it for a test. I want you to be able to use it and know it when you go to the store and you see things and you understand what's going on. All right. So let me know if you've got questions. Hopefully this video was helpful to wrap up chapter 6. Remember, on the exam will be chapter 1, 2, 3, and 4, and chapter 6, not chapter 5. Not that you have the book anyway, but just so you know kind of what we're doing. All the slides are available for you. The study guide is out there for you. I'll open it up in just a minute as soon as I post this recording, or it might already be open for you as soon as you're watching this. The exam will open on Wednesday, 40 questions, multiple choice, 2.5 points piece. You have 50 minutes to take the exam unless you have an accessibility statement on file with me and the accessibility office. Then that will change for you based on that. Other than that, it's pretty simple. And then when we get back together the following Monday, which is the 23rd, we'll start on chapter 7. When we start chapter 7, that is one of my favorite chapters that we will do. We'll launch our first assignment, first kind of individual assignment that you'll work on. And then that next Wednesday, we will launch our group project. Okay. So I know we're off a little bit on the schedule, but I put in extra time. I put in some fluff in there because I knew with travel and different things going on, this is what would happen. So I hope you've all had a wonderful weekend, and I hope that you came back safely today to campus or to wherever you needed to be. If you've got questions, just let me know, and I will talk to you very soon. Okay, bye.